Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our first Learn at Home webinar of the year. It is
2021.
2021. Woo! My name is Kate Venturini. I'm really excited to be here. This is one of my favorite things to do these days, which is host all of you at our Learn at Home educational webinar series, which is hosted by URI Cooperative Extension and our college, which is the College of the Environment and Life Sciences at the University of Rhode Island. Tonight, we are very lucky to be joined by my colleague and friend, Amanda Missimer. She is going to talk about this snazzy title we came up with, New Year, New Diet, Exploring a Plant-Based Dietary Pattern. And just to share a little bit with you about Dr. Missimer, she is a clinical faculty member in the Department of Nutritional Sciences, and she's also a nutrition extension specialist with Cooperative Extension. We're very psyched about that. Amanda's work focuses on providing nutrition education to the students at URI and Rhode Islanders with a focus on overall nutrition understanding for a healthy lifestyle in all individuals. So I'm sure many of you can understand why we're offering this particular session in the new year, but obviously it's important for any time. Next slide. So just a little bit about Cooperative Extension for those of you who have not joined us before. Extension is part of the land grant university system, and it exists in every state in the United States. In Rhode Island, we are the land grant institution, and so URI is the host of Cooperative Extension. And to make a long story short, 100 years ago plus, when farmers and homemakers were not able to come to university because they were home taking care of their families and growing food for our society, somebody had the great idea of bringing science-based university resources to farmers and homemakers. And so back in the day, we were formed to support those folks and make sure that we were, growing healthy food. And now that our issues are broader than just food systems and agriculture, we actually work in 4 other strategic areas that are listed here on the right. Tonight's talk, I think, will cover 2 of them, food systems and agriculture, and also healthy lifestyles. And so one of the greatest silver linings of all of us being at home is that we've been able to offer these webinars in the comfort of folks' living rooms or offices. And that's allowed us to reach more people than we were able to before. So please, if you can spread the word about these sessions, they'll happen every other Tuesday, and we will promote a session that already was recorded on those off weeks. Next slide. So just a few housekeeping items for those of you who were here early. I mentioned there are 3 dots on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. If you click that, a Q&A box will come up. Please enter your questions there during the course of Dr. Missimer's talk, and we will do a Q&A when her slides are done. Also, you are going to automatically receive an email with a link to a survey after this webinar. It might come in to your inbox from Messenger at WebEx. We read all the responses to the surveys we send, and we use that feedback to improve our educational offerings. So thank you in advance for completing that. It'll take you 1 minute. And finally, this session is being recorded, and it will be posted with closed captioning on our YouTube channel within the week, so you can share the link when you are so inspired by everything Amanda says tonight with all of your friends and family. So from everyone at Cooperative Extension, I just want to let you all know Happy New Year, and we pride ourselves on providing access to science. So I hope that you enjoyed tonight's session, and I will see you for the Q&A a little later. Take it away, Dr. M.
Thanks so much, Kate. And thanks for having me today. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for being here from across Rhode Island and from across the United States. I'm excited to talk to you as the first official Learn from Home for 2021. And I think it is perfect timing as Kate and I organized for, a lot of those New Year's resolutions. So I will be talking today about plant-based diets, but also the foundations of healthy diets. So I do want to talk before we begin. Again, as Kate mentioned, I am a professor. I teach at the university to all types of students, from large undergraduate courses into smaller graduate courses and everything in between. So you will notice a lot of text on my slides, but I'm hoping to provide a lot of robust details to those outside of the text. There are some interactions, so feel free to throw those in participation in the chat, and happy to answer any of your Q&As. I actually have the box pulled up, so if it's a question that I feel like will enhance it for everyone, I'll answer it right then. And if not, we'll make sure we get to it at the end. So thank you so much for being here. And we're going to learn about the enigma, or the hot term, that is the plant-based diet. And, this is just getting bigger and bigger. So I'm happy to have you guys all here so we can talk about plant-based diet. So what is the plant-based diet? And then also, what is a healthy diet? So when I started doing all this into, healthy plant-based diets, many years ago, there are so many different definitions out there. And a lot of times I get questions from students and people in the community saying, how do I have a healthy diet? Well, it's tough because, of course, everybody's individual. Everybody has different likes, dislikes, needs, wants, conditions that impact what they want. So, and what will also be right for them. So it's difficult to make healthy diet into one distinct definition. And unfortunately, plant-based diets fall under that same distinction. So I won't be able to provide one definition to the end of this. But overall, if we look at this first bullet point, a healthy plant-based diet will aim to maximize consumption of nutrient-dense plant foods. So we're going to talk about what that means for nutrient density, and also plant foods, because plant foods go much beyond fruits and vegetables. We're going to think about grains. If you can see down here on this third slide, fruits, beans, peas, lentils, soybeans, seeds, and nuts. So we have anything that comes from a plant. Then we'll also talk about how plant-based diets are different from vegetarian diets, vegan diets, and then the interaction of protein sources such as eggs or maybe fish involved in these diets. All right, so before we jump into that, we're going to talk about a suggested healthy eating pattern. Now, I say this in all my classes, I'm going to say it here. You're going to see these things and you're going to be like, yeah, we know. We know what a healthy eating pattern is. We know that we need to eat fruits and vegetables. But I am here to remind you, it is January 2021. I don't think there's been a better time in your life to have New Year, New You. So we will remember all of the things and all of the components that make up a healthy diet. And what I want you to remember is you don't need to achieve, it says can't see my slides. Kate?
I can see them. I'm not sure why that is, but I would keep.
Okay, keep going.
I would keep going.
Okay,
Everybody can see them.
Other people can see them. Okay, sorry, Carol. Okay, thanks for everyone for jumping in on that. So, what I was saying back to the healthy diet is that, yes, you know all of these things, but what I want you to remember is don't feel like you need to achieve these every single day. Every single day doesn't have to be perfect. We're looking to have healthy diets over the course of a week or even 2 weeks. So if you don't meet any of these things each day, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I have really crappy days where all I eat is cheese and popcorn, and those are okay days too. And days where I eat lots of vegetables, those are okay days too. So what makes up a healthy diet is a variety of different food sources. We have all of the components of our My Plate, which we'll talk about. Balance. So that's the balance between having those healthy meals and having the fun foods too. I believe in an all foods fit approach. So if you like ice cream, we can make it work. If you like cookies, we can make it work. It's all about finding balance. Then nutrient and energy adequacy, which we'll talk about in more detail coming up. And then our big underline, moderation. Everything in moderation, all foods fit. We can have 3 cookies, we can have 10 sticks of celery, we can have anything we want in moderation as long as it fits within balance. So just some reminders there. So let's talk about this word nutrient density. So this means the nutrient content of the food compared to the total calories. So if you think this apple is 80 calories total, so we just think about the calories, and then we think about how many nutrients are also loaded into that apple. And when we think about nutrients, that's things like vitamins and minerals. Those are going to be our two big nutrients that we're looking at, because those nutrients are really what helps keep us functioning properly. That helps make us able to stand up and walk around and do our day. So the most nutrient dense foods, basically you can think about which food do you get the most bang for your buck, both energy and nutrients, are going to be whole fruits and whole vegetables. So here's a little quiz. Which of these has a greater nutrient density? Now they're matched because they're both 10 ounces, but you have 10 ounces of soda on my left and 10 ounces of milk on my right. So we've got some answers coming in here. We got milk. We got one person who said milk. We'll take it. Let's see. You got it. Yep. So milk is going to be more nutrient dense. So as you'll notice, they have approximately the same amount of calories, but what milk provides that soda does not, protein, vitamins, minerals, all over here. So while you're getting the same amount of basic calories, you're getting more bang for your buck when it comes to a beverage with milk over soda. Okay, so then what about the opposite of nutrient density, which would be empty calorie foods? That means that it's simply providing you calories, which you need for energy. You need calories all day long to keep your body going, but you don't want to have too many of these empty calories because they're not, I will talk about that at the end. That's a good question about almond milk. Empty calories will then provide not as much nutrient density. So here we see very low nutrient density. So if we look back to this, we can say that yes, it's providing us calories and that's great because we need those to function, but we're not getting much out of anything else. So things that are empty calorie foods more tend to be high in sugar, higher in fat. They're considered empty, but remember they are still providing energy. So these are things that we want to add in moderation, but you don't want to have those comprising the majority of your diet. And I know what you're saying. You're all sitting at home being like, we know, but it's okay. This is all building into something. So next we have energy density. So this is thinking about what package size energy comes in, because that plays into your choices as well. Are you in the mood for a large volume of food? Are you running quick so you want a little snack? If you want to get energy from your food, what is the best way to get it? So when we think about energy density, this one's a little bit more difficult because it's the calories in food compared to the weight of the food. So I think a good example is something like nuts, which are very small and compact, but they have a lot of calories in a very little amount. So you can have, everybody says, oh, 8 almonds, right? But 8 almonds are a really great snack, and that's, 200 calories. Or you could have 2 cups of lettuce, which would be, 15 calories. But have you ever seen 2 cups of lettuce? That is like a lot of lettuce. So if you're in the mood to really have a big meal, you would have something that has less energy density. So here are some examples of very low versus very high energy density. And again, it's just about the knowledge of this, because that's going to choose. You're going to use this throughout the day to kind of choose and think like, okay, I need some energy, I need a snack, but I don't have time to sit down and make a big salad. What do I want? Do I want to grab some peanut butter or some nuts and seeds and hit the road? Or I really am in the mood for like something luxurious. Whoops. I want lettuce, tomatoes, carrots, broccoli, all in this huge salad, and I can have as much as I want because it's low energy density. So these are just all things to consider. And note here that the higher energy density foods are more associated with the snacks, the cookies, the fried food, and that's those carbohydrates that are kind of densely packed, especially in things like cookies. So you'll note the difference between the two is the water content. So if something has higher water content, then it's usually going to have lower energy density. That's why everybody always says, oh, iceberg lettuce doesn't give you anything. It is water. I mean, that's pretty much true. However, I will tell you, #1 fan of iceberg lettuce right here. Love it. Crunchy, amazing, wonderful. Put it on anything. So just because it only provides water, so what? Fiber, water. I like fiber and water. Go ahead and add it in there. when we're looking at energy density, again, this is all like, what are you in the mood for? How much food do you want to eat right now? And I like this example because you'll notice that they are calorically matched, meaning they provide the same amount of energy. So the soup meal over on my left has 535 calories, and then the chicken sandwich on my right has 535 calories. So if you look at the two of those, look how much food is in that high nutrient density. That's like a lot. A whole sandwich, a whole bowl of soup, and yogurt and berries, that's a lot of food. But it's exactly the same amount of energy as something that you see over here. So then you start to think about, what am I in the mood for volume-wise? And also, what nutrients can I get out of this as well? Because this nutrient-dense food over here is going to provide more of those nutrients than the meal on the right. So things to consider. All right, pop quiz. Which of these is the most nutrient dense? So each thing that you see here is approximately 200 calories. You have a fourth a cup of cashews, 2 cups of grapes, or a half cup of raisins. So which one do you think provides you the most nutrients? Which is the most nutrients? Oh, we've got guesses all over the board here. We got grapes, we got cashews. Nutrient density. Looks like it's a tie between grapes and cashews. So the answer is grapes, because for those 200 calorie grapes, you are actually going to get the most nutrients per weight. What about energy density? Which provide you the most energy in the amount? We got a vote from Kate. We've got a link, raisins. We had cashews. Aren't raisins just grapes without the water? They sure are. But you can eat a lot more of them that way because they don't have the water. Cashews. So the answer is cashews. So this provides you the most energy in the smallest amount, because you'll notice here it has a fourth cup. So that's going to be the smallest amount with the most, with 200 calories. So if you wanted a quick energy boost, this would be the smallest amount of food you could get for the most energy. So, and you'll notice here that these are going to have the least amount of water. This will have a middle amount of water, and these will have the most amount of water. So you can think about it like that. If you're in the mood for volume, you want a big snack, this is where it's at. If you're quick on the go, you want something, quick snack, a little bit of cashews. All right, so when we're thinking about our healthy plate, we want to think about the My Plate, and the new one actually just came out this week. So that's a dietitian's Christmas morning, and we were all excited to read the 200-page report that came out. And I was very excited to see that eggs were an important part of infant foods, because eggs are a really big passion food of mine. So I was excited to see them in there as an important first food for infants. Sidebar. So on My Plate, we have the food groups that you're probably familiar with. You may remember the food pyramid. That's what we had prior to the My Plate. So just as a review, grains, vegetables, and fruits are all going to be encompassed coming from plants. And then we have dairy and protein foods, which come from animal sources. So when we start to think about the healthy dietary pattern that is outlined by those dietary guidelines, by the government, things that we follow, you start to think, well, why would I choose a different dietary pattern? And note here that I do want to say the word dietary pattern separate than diet, because that's something that we in the nutrition field like to really say. Your diet or your dietary pattern is what you eat every single day. The idea that diet and weight loss kind of got connected with each other is kind of sad for us, because we don't really want to think about those two things intermingling. We want to think about your dietary pattern as what you eat and how you eat each day. So some of the reasons why people choose a different dietary pattern other than that outlined by the My Plate is for a number of different reasons. Some may be religious reasons, philosophical reasons, ecological reasons, or health-related reasons. And these are, of course, just a few. Some people may just be bored with the diet that they're eating, and they may be like, hey, 2021, why don't I try something new? And I'm excited that you're here because we can talk about what you can try. So here are many types of dietary patterns, and you'll kind of see this is like a little bit overwhelming. But if you notice what's at the top of each one of these, and I'm going to talk about what each one of these mean, and maybe one of them will pique your interest to give it a shot. is that fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts are all a major part of these dietary patterns that don't have a primary protein component coming from an animal product. So you'll notice here in these crossed out areas of fish and seafood, meat less than once per week, meat more than once per week is mostly crossed out, but what's coming in strong is those fruits, vegetables, legumes, and nuts. What I do say is if you're interested in a plant-based diet, you better like beans. I hope you like beans. You better like beans because you're doing a lot of them. And we'll talk about that when we get to protein. And also, look how many eggs are in here. Yay. This is all personal preference. So let's talk about these different types of beans are divine. Yes, Tori. I love that. All right. So vegan, and I want to just talk about all of these different types because there's so many hot catchphrases out there. So let's talk about what each one of these means. Vegan is a total vegetarian, meaning there is no animal products consumed or used in that person's diet, which means they're not wearing leather, they're not eating beef. Any sort of meat, seafood, poultry, including eggs and dairy products, which is sort of like a secondary animal product. When you think about something like milk or butter, it doesn't come directly from the animal itself in terms of meat, but it is something that the animal produces. So this means any and all animal products are excluded from both the diet and from the person's lifestyle. But it does not require a consumption of whole foods. So note that word there, whole foods. That's when you think about like a full apple or a whole head of broccoli versus something like enriched pasta or something like that. So any sort of refined sugar that would come along with something like pasta or cookies or things like that. So vegans are not restricted from that in any way. They're simply restricting any sort of animal product. And that'll be important when we come to plant-based. So then you also have a subset of that, which is raw food vegan. This means that it's the same as vegans, but they have their food all cooked at temperatures that do not exceed 118 degrees, meaning that they're mostly eating raw food and raw vegetables. So next is lacto-vegetarian, and lacto is our prefix that's going to be referring to things with lactose. So mostly dairy products, eggs, milk, butter, that kind of stuff, mostly eggs. So when you are a lacto-vegetarian, that means you will be excluding things from the diet that are not in that lactose area. So meaning you can have milk products along with the vegetables that are typically consumed under a vegetarian diet. So anything with plants and milk products as well. And I think I just misspoke actually when I said that eggs were included in this. Eggs are not included in lacto-vegetarian. I apologize. So just including those milk products, because there is another subset called ovo-vegetarian. And ovo is the prefix that refers to eggs. So this means that a person follows a regular vegetarian pattern. However, they can incorporate eggs. So there are very many different types. So this one combines both of them. This is a Lacto-Ovo Vegetarian, meaning that a person follows a vegetarian pattern. However, they do include dairy products, eggs, milk, cheese, things that have both lactose and then also eggs as well. So as you can see, there are many different types, and you don't have to stick to one of these types. You know, you can give it a try, find out if it works for you. Then we have the Mediterranean style eating pattern, and this is found to be the most heart-healthy eating pattern out there. It's been reviewed in multiple hundreds of thousands of studies, and the Mediterranean diet is similar to the whole food diet, plant-based diet that we're going to be talking about, but it does allow small amounts of meat in the forms of typically chicken, with a big emphasis on fish. It includes dairy products, eggs, a little bit of red meat, and it has a big emphasis on olive oil and red wine and not restricting fat. Yes, red wine, you got it. So that leads us into whole food. And now we hear this a lot. So what does whole food mean? It means plant foods in their whole form. So consuming fresh fruits and vegetables in their form from the way they are, without being broken down. So having like corn off the cob rather than creamed corn, or you have potatoes chopped and sauteed rather than from a box that was mashed, like the flakes, for example. So having that original food as close as you can get to the form that it was. And that has a big emphasis on fiber, because as foods go through processing stages, they lose most of the fiber in the processing. And of course, nutrients are added back in. That's called like enrichment. But fiber is something that just won't function the same way once it's outside that original food. Kate, are you having trouble hearing me? Okay.
No,
I'm
it
sorry
sounds
for the
good. You
people
should
who
just,
can't hear me.
I'm responding to them. So just keep going, because
Okay.
this is recorded. So we want to make sure people stick with us.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so anyway, back to fiber. You can also see that seeds and nuts are an important part of this, because that's another whole food that you can put in. So this whole food, plant-based, low-fat diet does look at limiting animal products, but I will talk about the pitfalls of limiting animal products and kind of where that falls into all of this. Okay, so I think the biggest thing to make clear here is the difference between the vegan diet and the plant-based diet. And then we have yet another subset of that, which is the whole food plant-based diet. So there's actually 3. And I know now, how many diets have I even listed right now? Like 10? It's crazy. So just referring to this, you can see that a vegan diet excludes all things animal and animal related, but allows parts like oils, highly processed foods, things like that. When we get into what's called a plant-based diet, they will limit, meaning that animal products are allowed, but only in small amounts. So rather than having, a big, 25-ounce steak, you would have something more like a 3-ounce steak on Sundays, for example. Maybe they have eggs 3 days a week. When you go to the whole food plant-based diet, that limits not only the animal products, but the really hallmark to the whole food plant-based diet is removing this highly processed foods and also oils. So taking away, I think, all the good stuff, like the cookies and the candies and the enriched pastas, white rice, things like that. So just be very careful of kind of the definition that people are using and kind of what you're looking at. So this is something that I talk about a lot, especially at the college level. We call them kind of college vegetarians, which they come to school, they say, I'm a vegetarian. I'm like, okay, what do you eat? They're like pasta and butter every day, French fries, lots of French fries. So what we learned from nutrient and energy density is that you can't get a lot of nutrients if you're only eating pasta with butter. So that's what I'm like, guys, it is time for vegetables. So when we look at something like this, you can be a good or a not so good vegetarian. So when we look at something like this, you can see this is a largely lettuce-based salad over here, which is fine and great, but that's not going to be able to sustain the nutrients that you need for your body to function properly. So if we look over on the right-hand side where it says SMART, then you'll see that there are a lot of things added to this. So you can see other vegetables in there. I think we've got avocado, zucchini, tomatoes, corn on top of everything. And this is even beyond vegetarian because we also see shrimp in there as well. But just showing that you can add more different types of vegetables, vegetables, legumes, things that really improve that vegetarian pattern that can help lead you toward a better vegetarian lifestyle. So when we talk about calories, this is something that goes along with having calories and thinking, okay, if I'm vegetarian, everything I eat is going to be low in calories. But as I just said, with the college vegetarian, that is not true. So here we see 440 calories versus 340 calories. If you had 400 calories to spend at lunch, which one would you prefer? So you can think about this in terms of, again, at the beginning of each day, you start with approximately $2,000 and you get to spend those however you want. For me, on the left, I get, oh my gosh, I got 2 eggs in there. I got a half of an avocado, all sorts of crunchy, amazing vegetables. that's worth those 440 calories. So just thinking about calories aren't everything. We have to think about also the nutrient density and how much that's providing to our body beyond just that number. So the eggs for the fries, there we go. A little bit of both. I like that. And there's no harm in that at all. A little side of fries on your salad. So getting around to that plant-based diet. So plant-based is really going to be focused on the vegetarian pattern, but it's going to be minimally reducing that, minimally taking out processed plant foods. So that's really where the plant-based diet is one step further than the vegetarian pattern. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's eliminating meat, because as you'll see, plant-based means that the majority of your food is coming from plants, but you may still have a small amount of these other things depending on the specific plant-based diet that you choose or the route that you choose to go. But the main flagship of this diet is reducing those processed foods. And we know they're energy dense. So how can you follow this diet? We start with fruits. You want to have any sort of fruit out there. Fruits are all good. The only type of fruit that you would want to avoid is a fruit that would be in like heavy syrup or candied fruit, because that would fall under that processing. And that's something that this particular dietary pattern steers you away from. So similarly with vegetables, all vegetables are welcome. And what you would want to avoid is vegetables that would be maybe in a very heavy sauce. Sometimes they come with cheese sauces that are very heavy in saturated fat. And I'm not against putting cheese on vegetables at all. I am for it. But some of those ones that come processed with the cheese can be very high in saturated fat and very high in sodium. So what I would suggest is getting a plain mixed vegetable bag. If you like those freezer bags, you can get the mixed vegetables, and then whipping up your own cheese sauce, which is pretty simple. So that's going to be less processed, and then you can fit inside the plant-based diet. So with tubers, this is another important part, since you are removing minimally, or you are reducing processed foods such as, pre-made pastas. You would want to turn to things like tubers. So potatoes, parsnips, sweet potatoes, things that could provide you those complex carbohydrates in your diet. We also have whole grains. So whole grains are going to be the original 3-part of the grain. It hasn't been refined, which means it still has the endosperm, the germ, and that's where all of the fiber and the nutrients is, along with that bran. So by having whole grains, and remember to check the label on this because that's how they get you. Make sure it says whole grain and not whole wheat. So stick to that whole grain. This is something that would be the least processed type of grain. So that's what this dietary pattern would want. And then lastly, as I said, gotta love legumes. So gotta be pro beans if you wanna try something like that, because beans are going to be your main source of protein in a dietary pattern like this. Of course, you can add eggs or a little bit of meat if that's what you choose to do, but legumes are still going to be the primary source of protein. So they're going to have to make their presence known, and probably 2 meals per day. All right, so here's an example of a plant-based diet shopping list. And as you can see, check out that vegetable list. That is a long shopping list for vegetables. As I said, to follow a diet like this, you have to be into fruits and vegetables, you have to be into whole grains, you have to be into legumes. And if you're not, that is okay. Because I'm going to give you a couple of tips where you can sort of try this out. You don't have to fully commit to it. Nuts and seeds. I'm not like a big nuts person, so that would be kind of tough for me. I'd have to like ease myself into that, maybe start with the honey roasted and like back myself all the way down. So there's many different ways to incorporate this. So talking to that, the gradual incorporation of this dietary pattern, if you're interested in it, is definitely key, especially if you're somebody who has a large part of your diet comprised of meat and you want to start to shift toward this. Cutting yourself off, no pun intended, cold turkey from meat would be difficult for your body. So you would want to gradually incorporate. And I like to do a 50-50 blend. So if you like to have meat and potatoes, try half the serving of meat, half the serving of potatoes, and add a half a serving of whatever beans you like. So you're still having the things that you're used to, but you're slowly incorporating, getting used to seeing legumes as part of your diet, or different tubers as part of your diet, or something like that. Do your research and be careful, because as we said, there are many different names for diets like this and many different things, many different claims out there. So definitely be careful. Always be looking for resources that have a .edu, .gov, so that you can trust education, so colleges, universities. I like Harvard Health personally. That's one of my favorite sources to send out to the community. I think they have really digestible stuff. Again, no pun intended. Do you know what it's like to be in nutrition? Just the puns. It's crazy. Thinking about doing, thanks, Michelle. Ha ha. I appreciate it. No, but I don't get any feedback on my jokes these days. Doing smart shopping, and perhaps you've heard of shopping the perimeter. This is mostly where you're going to find everything to fit in this pattern. Like, take a U-turn at the freezer section. Well, except for, frozen fruits and vegetables are down there too. And those are a wonderful choice, especially given, this type of the year and where we live in New England. Our LA person is luckier than us, as they have fabulous full-time farmers markets and amazing avocados down there. So what we like to do this is something that the nutrition and dietetics industry. Oh my gosh, thanks, Kathleen. I got great comments coming in on my jokes. What we like to suggest in the nutrition field of dietetics, and this has been around forever, is Meatless Monday. So if you want to give this a try, and that's like the little thing, Meatless Monday, it's just try and see if you can do Mondays. Just try and make Monday a plant-based day and see, what you're missing, what you need to add. Like, there are so many amazing recipes out there. I'm going to talk about my love for tofu and all the things that we can get in there. Okay, I think because I see so many questions, I'm going to skip over this in the interest of time. It's a little case study just talking about how switching to a plant-based diet helped this person who had a couple of chronic diseases. But I wanted to make it aware that this is a dramatic example. And you have to be very careful when you hear testimonies of things like, oh, I lost 100 pounds doing this. And oh, all my things were cured if I did that. These are extreme examples. So you just want to be careful with the things that you see. These are some chronic diseases that have been associated with success in plant-based diets. So we see improvement of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and overall mortality. And that's been shown in a majority of different studies over time. But again, this is a dietary pattern that you kind of have to hold on to. So thinking about doing this long-term would have the best benefits on this. And again, if that's not something you think you want to do because you really love steak, then that's okay. You can still have steak in there as well. All right, so onto our nutrient-rich diet. This is just a couple of the pitfalls that I wanted to just make you aware of when you are switching to or trying to switch to a plant-based diet, is that there are a couple of nutrients that we have to look out for. So here you can see different servings following these patterns. So we see the servings in the grains group, the protein, vegetables, fruit, and milk. So you can see that some of these don't really receive some of these nutrients if they aren't getting that. So for example, vegan wouldn't be consuming milk products, so they could be missing out on these nutrients that are listed here. So protein, we've got one of the B vitamins, vitamin D, which is really important, especially at our latitude, another B vitamin, and calcium as well, which we know is important for strong bones. So when we talk about the impact on nutrition, everything always has, a positive and a negative impact. And again, remember that this is all very individualized. So when we talk about the health advantages of a plant-based diet, I think number 1 and number 2 are right there. So we've got antioxidants coming out, the yin yang from all of the fruits and vegetables that we're eating. Antioxidants are important in fighting a lot of different things, a lot of inflammation in our body, and we really want a strong balance and availability of antioxidants to help fight off things. It's important in cancer prevention, all of those things. So we need that. Also, vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals are all sort of associated with that. Phytochemicals are chemicals that come from plants. Phyto, that prefix means plant, And they're things that our body doesn't require, but they can provide us additional benefit. Like one that I work with closely is lutein, and that's found in eggs, and it's an antioxidant that helps prevent age-related macular degeneration. Not that I'm, promoting eggs on every slide. The other health advantage, of course, is fiber. Fiber is important for digestion regulation. Basically, it keeps the train moving. If you have constipation, you need fiber. If you have diarrhea, you need fiber. If you have any sort of digestive issue, except for like a few exceptions, usually the solution is fiber. It keeps everything moving slowly. It's important for creating bulk. So that's one of the best things that can come from a plant-based diet. This diet is also naturally low in saturated fat, which is more associated with cholesterol than other type or heart disease than other types of fat, and also lower in cholesterol. So what are some health concerns of following this diet? Again, remember I talked about the college vegetarian. So these are things that I'll talk about if I'm counseling, a college age person who's interested in being a vegetarian or a vegan or plant-based. So the biggest thing is protein and protein quality. So protein quality means it's the protein's ability. So how well it can support body growth. And you may have heard this before. Oh, this is high quality protein. So what does that mean? High quality protein is very easily digestible, meaning that we can take it in our body and break it down very easily. We have all the tools to do so. And it's made of a certain amount or a certain organization of amino acids that will provide what's called a complete protein. And a complete protein means that it has all the essential amino acids. So amino acids come in two types, and I think they have it here. Amino acids are the building blocks. They're what makes up all of the protein in our body, and they come in two types. They have essential, meaning that it's essential that we get these from our diet. We can't get them anywhere else. And then we have non-essential, meaning that we can synthesize it in our body on our own. So when you have a complete protein, that means it has all 9 essential amino acids. And that's going to be all animal sources of protein. So if you look at this second bullet down here, it says a complete protein will have all 9 essential amino acids, and that's all animal sources with the exception of gelatin. And then the opposite of that is incomplete protein. And why I want to talk about incomplete protein is because you'll see that means it's missing 1 or more essential amino acid, and that's going to be your plant products. So most foods coming from plants will be incomplete protein. And we'll talk about how that is part of the issue when people don't have all of the components of the plant-based diet that they need in order to provide it. So the exceptions here are soy and quinoa. Those are complete proteins from plants. All right. So when you have an incomplete protein, then you create something called a complementary protein. So a complementary protein is when 2 incomplete proteins combine to create a complete protein food. And if we look at food history, there's a lot of super classic combinations of generations and generations that people have been eating to create complementary proteins. And I think one of the best examples is rice and beans, which we know is a staple in most Latin countries across the world. And you'll see those two together because the rice and the beans come together to create a complete protein food. And that's why they're often eaten together. So here you'll see some other classic hummus and pita bread combinations that we see across the world. All right, here's some other examples of complementary protein dishes that you may have seen or that you can make. Something where it's just having that other thing in there that creates that complete protein. So this is something that people following a strict vegan diet or a plant-based diet will have to consider. Here's another one, black beans and cornmeal tortilla. So we know that's coming from the corn in that case. Okay, so let's talk about soy. I had tofu just last night, so this is perfect timing. Another thing about being plant-based is try and love tofu. Tofu is wonderful. I know that it can be a little bit weird and a little bit scary at first, but I do implore you to give it a shot because what's wonderful about it is that it literally tastes like nothing. So you can make it taste like anything, which is, it's really wonderful thing. Actually, I had a friend make a cheesecake out of tofu and it was wonderful. I was really surprised. So if you look up tofu recipes, there are so many wonderful things. I know that for a long time, soy was associated with potential risk of breast cancer. That's been disproven. So there is not strong evidence to support that. Other types of soy-based products are tempeh. I see silken tofu chocolate mousse coming up. There we go. Soy nuts are coming into play. This is really wonderful if you want to go ahead and give tofu a shot. It's an amazing protein source. And as we know, a complete protein. So this is just a little bit more on it. Basically, that it's made from crushed soybeans. It can be fortified with other vitamins and minerals. We talked about soy milk a little bit, but I do want to bring this sentence here. I'm on the first bullet, third sentence. Regular soy milk can substitute for cow's milk as a beverage or a recipe. And soy milk is actually the only alternate dairy source that has a similar nutrient profile to cow's milk. So that's the one that we would consider as a somewhat equivalent, as best as equivalents can get to cow's milk, which, you know, is a wonderful beverage on its own. So it's high protein, it's high fiber. Give it a shot. Give tofu a chance. That's my 2021 campaign, give tofu a chance. All right, and then circling around to the vegetarian diet, and this is true really for vegan and plant-based as well, is the possible disadvantages. So if we look over here on the right-hand column, these are some disadvantages of vitamins that may be missed. And we see this a lot, you know, if somebody comes in, often it presents as fatigue. When somebody comes in, oh, I'm so tired, and they say, I'm vegetarian or I'm vegan. And then we start to look at things like vitamin B12 and vitamin D, which are really associated with animal foods. So that's why we see those in low levels. These minerals, iron, zinc, and calcium, which are also more closely associated with animal foods. We see lower omega-3 fatty acids, certain amino acids, and overall just lower energy. So those are things that we need to look at as well and definitely be aware of. So overall, the health outcomes and concerns are listed here. This is kind of like a summary of the things that I just described. So possible mismanagement of a protein-based diet could be a protein deficiency, an energy deficiency, iron anemia deficiency, which we also see often in college students who are mismanaging this dietary pattern. So that's, you know, when you supplement with iron until we get them back up to their levels and then start to incorporate some iron-rich foods. We actually I hear quite often, I was a vegetarian, but then I had an issue with iron, so I started adding chicken once a week. And that's, you know, you find out what works for you. So these are just things. And of course, as a dietitian overall, I recommend having these come from food sources over supplements. So sort of working, maybe if you wanted to try this, you would have, instead of Meatless Monday, you would have Meat Monday. And then all the other days would be meatless or something like that. You know, we can figure it out. So as you know, protein is important for many different things. Protein recommendations are unique for individuals. So when you do try this protein-based diet, you know, you wouldn't have necessarily the same amount of protein needs as everyone in your house. So it's something just to consider overall. So in summary, a healthy plant-based diet does require planning, reading labels, discipline, and a love of legumes. You have to definitely consume a variety of different foods, especially to reach that calorie. I didn't really talk about it, but you have to eat a lot of food when you are on a plant-based diet, like a lot of food, because a lot of the foods you're eating are lower in calories. So you do need to have a lot. So if you're a person who like loves eating a huge meal, this is definitely something that you should give a shot, because you can have a big old salad with lots of beans. And the hallmark of this diet really is avoiding or limiting animal products, refined products, fats, and oils. So one of the major benefits is definitely reducing the risk of chronic disease. That's been shown across the board. Also just switching it up, maybe finding a fruit and vegetable that you didn't try before and now you are, because it's going to be something that you're trying that's new. So that is our homework. There we go. If you're ready to give it a shot, this is what I recommend for Meatless Monday. So this will be your first challenge for next week. Here's some examples of meatless menu ideas. Also, I'm going to put the link for our community ed website. It's on the next slide. And we have so many recipes on there that are tried and tested, a lot of them for Meatless Mondays as well. I'll say my favorite is absolutely vegetable stir fry with every vegetable I can find and tofu and chicken. I actually like to do both. I do half tofu, half chicken, and throw every vegetable I can find in that stir fry. So there are two ways to contact me. You can always submit a question through our website, which is this, and you'll see this picture of me in a hairnet, and you can submit your question to me at any time. And then we also have all of the recipes and resources here on our Community Nutrition Ed website, and they're all right there. And that is all, and I'm ready for the questions.
Oh, and do we have them? That was awesome.
I know, and well, thank you. I just looked at the time. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Oh, that's okay. This is great. So I thank you everyone for sticking with us. And just quickly, while I can, we do I'll just say one more time, we do have a webinar every other week. So please come back. You can hear from fantastic people like Amanda, who probably won't be as funny, but you know, just join us and see. So I'm going to group some of the protein questions together, just because I want to make sure we get to as many of these as we can. So Tori said, I was under the impression, going back to the beginning of your presentation, that milk contains inflammatory agents and hormones, plus saturated fat and antibiotics, and also the majority of the population are lactose intolerant. How is it that milk can be classified as a health food?
Right. So I will have to dispel some of that. Milk does not have any more inflammatory markers than any other beverage. As far as antibiotics and things like that, that's all regulated by the USDA, and those don't make it through pasteurization. They don't make it through your stomach. Thank you, everyone who's saying thank you to me also. They don't make it through your stomach acid, things like that. The majority of the population also is not lactose intolerant. That's not really a percentage that would considered a majority. There are areas of the world where the majority of the population is lactose intolerant, but not here in America. So for some reason, cow's milk has gotten a bad reputation. And from us in the nutrition field, we're really not sure why, because it is one of the most nutrient-rich beverages that you can consume. And all of the data shows that milk does not provide anything but benefit. It's a great source of calories. Like it's a huge recovery drink after workouts. That's really popular with athletes. So I'm sorry that you've read that somewhere else. I wouldn't support those claims.
Great. And then speaking of maybe not great information, Tabby saw a dietitian who was always on her about protein. When she gave her meals, the dietitian would always insist that she wasn't eating protein because beans are carbs and not protein. So, but everything you read for non-meat diets says beans are a great protein source. So what's the truth? Dr. Missimer.
Yeah, so I'm happy to answer that one. Well, first of all, protein's different for everybody. It's so the three macronutrients are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And it's the one macronutrient that is based on your body mass alone. It's not based where we have general recommendations for carbohydrates and fat, but protein is truly individualized. So the thing about all foods, though, is no food is one macronutrient out there. Every food is a certain percentage combination of carbohydrate, protein, and fat. It's in everything. You're very, very unlikely to find something that's just one. So you have to think that, yeah, sometimes beans are listed as a carb, and you know what? Sometimes they're listed as a protein because they're both. And that truly is what makes them such a great food, because they have both. As a dietitian, we always recommend having all three macronutrients at every single meal. So beans, that's already ticking off all three. There you go.
That was fascinating. I did not know that. Here's another good one. A lot of good ones here. Where does tofu come into play? It's plant-based, but processed. Do you recommend it? I think we know that, but
oh yeah, that's tricky because it is processed. You're right. So it's a plant-based food. Absolutely. It's soybeans. It's a complete protein, which is what makes it unique for a plant-based food. It's definitely processed. Well, if you do a toasted soybean or like an edamame, that's not processed. I don't really know where tofu falls on the whole food thing then, because it is technically processed. Because everything I read is like tofu, tofu, tofu. So that's tricky. It's tricky because I don't know the major processing. I don't exactly know how tofu is made, to be truthful with you. But if you are trying to follow this to the extreme strictness, which I don't recommend, because I think following anything too strict only breeds us for missing what we don't have, you could stick to something like edamame or roasted soybean.
Yeah, just following up on the tofu bit here as I eat cashews, by the way.
There we go.
I hear someone shared, I heard somewhere that too much tofu can increase your estrogen levels and that's tied to
Yes.
breast cancer risk. Has that been
Right.
disproven or is, yeah.
Yeah, so I did address that very briefly here because I've gotten that in other presentations that I've given around this. And that was something that was hypothesized for a while, but that's been disproven since then. Yeah. So we're good on that.
Good news. Opinions on juice cleanses?
Oh, be careful. So juice cleanses are, something that we as a field don't support because juice is going to be removing the fiber from fruit, and it's also going to be missing a lot of other things like protein and fat. So, and then what it's going to do is mainly like pull out the water weight and also will leave you very hungry. So the risk of over consuming later is definitely there. So I would recommend avoiding the juice cleanses, please. Especially if they're the laxative ones. Please be careful with dehydration as well.
Yeah. Oh, I meant to start with this question. Is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable?
I believe it's a fruit because it has its seeds inside. Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Have I been listening in all the plant seminars?
That's great.
Yes.
People still go back and forth. How about white potatoes versus sweet potatoes? Is there a healthier option or is there no difference?
It's minimal. It really is just differences. Some of the potatoes are starchier, so they're going to just let out more starch, and they may have a different nutrient profile. Sweet potatoes got really hot for a minute, and they're still kind of hot. And I mean, no, I wouldn't classify them any differently. They do just have a lesser starch content, and they have some, they have beta carotene in there, which makes them, I guess, like a little bit sexy. That's a phytochemical that is an antioxidant as well. I think it's just a preference thing. I like to do a potato blend myself. I'm really into blending the thing. If you think something's like really good and then something's like not so good, blend them together and you have your best match. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I happen to eat keto, and so
there we go.
Vegetables grown underground are not high on the list because they have more starch, but we learned a lot about different potatoes, and that one, this is just a little aside. Here's an interesting question, because you're so wise, Destiny says. Any diet patterns or foods in particular that assist with mental health, specifically autism? That's a big question.
Oh, that is, yeah, that's a great question. And that's tough. I actually did a talk with a speech therapy clinic not too long ago about exactly that. And that's really difficult. I overall can't really speak to it too much because that's definitely not an area of expertise, but I know it's a lot about texture. So sort of finding out what textures work best for that child and what they gravitate to. And I know they get very stuck on like they call it like a white diet. So starting to find out like what textures they like. And I think it's about like multiple exposure, but I would implore you to work with the other people in your support staff. So the physical speech therapist, the physical therapist, they will have some more insight into sort of that kind of texture stuff.
Thank you. We have a few questions about milk.
Okay.
Would you please talk about almond milk? And
yeah.
Then Carolina, beautiful name, asked about almond and oat milk, and then Dot was asking about coconut milk. So really
all the hot milks. Yeah. Well, I will say that the milk industry itself is, upset about the word milk and the use of milk. And I think that'll be changing pretty soon to like dairy-based beverage or dairy-like beverage, because these milks that are out there are not direct equivalents to cow's milk. And even though they do have fortification, so they say, oh, this has the same amount of calcium as cow's milk, it isn't delivered in the same way. There's something called bioavailability, and that means how much of a nutrient is in something when it goes through your whole digestion, how much actually shows up inside of your body. So why cow's milk is an excellent source of all of these nutrients is because it has bioavailability of the carbohydrate, the protein, and the fat in order to deliver these nutrients, where almond milk doesn't have that same content, and it's not in natural emulsified bubbles like it is in cow's milk. So even though they do have on the label the same amount, they're just not going to react the same. So what I would say is enjoy almond milk, enjoy oat milk, enjoy coconut milk as much as you want. You know, beware of the added sugar, because if you look under the sweetened and vanilla flavor, the added sugar is quite high. So do be aware of the added sugar, but enjoy it as a beverage like you would enjoy, you know, a juice or a soda or something like that, and not as a direct equivalent to cow's milk. As I mentioned, soy milk is the closest substitute. So that would be what you would want to go for if you could. We drink almond milk here because my husband's lactose intolerant. So that's what we have. And I like it. We do the unsweetened, and I use the unsweetened plain almond milk in everything because it's not sweet. So you can use it in cooking all of the savory dishes, and I use it as a direct equivalent and it works just fine. Yeah.
This is an interesting question from Anita. Why, as an older person taking D3 supplements, am I still not seeing my vitamin D levels increasing? She's very active outside and not overweight.
Okay. Yeah, that's tough. So I guess what I would recommend for that is making sure that you're taking them with a food that has some sort of somewhat significant fat source in it. Because vitamin D3 really needs fat to be absorbed well. So if you're taking it in the morning on an empty stomach, it's not going to be its best. And that goes right into that bioavailability. So when you take it with something that has a fat source, it's going to be absorbed a little bit better. And also just make sure that you're taking enough, because if you have deficiency, you have to way overdo it with supplements, like way overdo it in order to get yourself up to baseline. And then once at baseline, you can take, because if you're taking only 200 IUs, that's not going to get you to where you want to be. So I would consult your doctor or a dietitian to make sure that you're taking enough to improve your deficiency.
Fascinating.
Oh, one more note on that.
Oh yeah.
I just want to talk about the very active outside. The thing with vitamin D synthesis with the help of sunlight is that you reach a maximum. Like your body will say, okay, stores are good. We got enough from the sunlight. We're done. So that's why you can't get any sort of vitamin D toxicity from like excessive time spent out in the sun, because your body actually has a mechanism to regulate that as well. I could really talk about vitamin D for a long time. So fascinating. Good stuff.
Well, I didn't know about, it's interesting because if you're intermittent fasting and you take your vitamins in the morning, does that mean we're having their effectiveness if we're taking them 8 hours before we eat anything?
I don't think I could say having, but I would say definitely reducing their effectiveness for sure. Now, not all vitamins function like that. Not all of them. The fat soluble ones absolutely function like that. Some of the water soluble do and some of them don't. So It depends, but we always recommend, well, first of all, we recommend food before supplements. And then secondly, if you do take supplements, take them with food.
Food before supplements. That's great. Fiber, a couple more questions. Fiber, what foods provide soluble fiber versus non-soluble, and do we need both?
Ooh, great question. Yes, we need both. Both are very important. So soluble means that we're able to break it down, meaning in our stomach, our digestion, we're able to break it down. We're able to use it as a carbohydrate. But insoluble fiber, we can't break down because that's made out of plants that we can't use. So that's what's broken down in our large intestine. And that's what produces, flatulence at times. So why we need it though is to keep everything moving. It basically provides bulk, if you can think about that. So rather than things running through too quickly or getting stuck, it always keeps us moving. So they're both really important. Insoluble fiber is, you can think of like the meat of the apple. I'm sorry, soluble fiber is the meat of the apple. That's like the white part of the apple. That's going to be mostly carbohydrates, water, and soluble fiber. The skin is the insoluble fiber. And that's typically true for most fruits and vegetables, the solubles on the inside and then the insolubles on the outside.
My, oh my. I could listen to this all night. I think everyone else could too, because we still have quite a few people. Okay,
I have no
asked
plans.
where does honey fit into this?
Honey, okay. Oh, that's a tricky one because that's technically an animal product. So a vegan would do absolutely no honey. It's tough for whole food as well because it's technically processed, right? I don't really know if I can make a call on that. I mean, for me, I'm an all foods fit, so I say honey fits in everywhere. But I think if you were following a strict plant-based whole food diet, then honey would be excluded.
Okay, and I think we'll end on this one. Do you have sources for meal plans to go by? I know you showed an example of where to start with a meatless Monday, but if people want a little bit more direction on eliminating more meat, or
that's tough because, like I said, this is a really popularized in the media sort of a diet, and I'm worried if you would go out in the world looking for meal plans. I don't have any pre-made. I guess I would recommend just starting to think about your diet that you really like and that you eat every day and making small substitutions. So if you like to have chicken, green beans, and rice, then all you have to do is switch out that white rice for whole grain rice and think, what can I have instead of the chicken? Maybe I want to have beans, maybe I want to have tofu, maybe I want to have lentils, something like that. So starting to think about very easy one-for-one substitutions.
seitan, is that how you say it? Seitan?
Yeah, seitan, tempeh.
Tempeh.
Oh yeah, they're all great. It's textured protein. It is amazing. That's like all the vegan meats are usually made out of those texturized vegetable proteins. And those are, another plug for my favorite thing, Aldi has an amazing vegan selection, has amazing gluten-free selection too. So those are choices to get it on the free. Yeah.
I'm just scanning for,
Okay.
I lied. This is the last question.
Okay.
So if you chose to go the vegetarian route, how would you best supplement B12 and vitamin D? And then someone else asked, what is the best form of a B12 supplement?
Yeah. So, right. We would look for foods that were highest in those vitamins as opposed to supplements always. But I do understand that that is just something that people can't achieve. So beans, again, are going to be a really good source of both of those. Well, they're going to be your best choice of a source. Again, with soy, that's going to have both the B12 and I don't know if soy has vitamin D offhand. That's a little bit tougher because vitamin D really isn't found widely, or if it is, it's found in such small amounts. And I do, like I said, I recommend food over supplements, but the one supplement I do recommend, especially at this latitude, is vitamin D, especially in the winter months. And that's not only for its role in bone health, but its role in immunity. So vitamin D has this burgeoning research on its role and its importance to immunity. And especially now, given what we have going on out there, we can't be too safe. So I say throw some vitamin D in. But again, eat it with a meal so you make sure that you're having some fat that can help digest it more efficiently.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
We are very lucky to have you, Dr. Missimer. This was great. There's still
happy to be here.
Coming in. A couple things for folks. Just
send them to me. Send them to me. You can send them to me here, and I'll get
Oh,
back
that's so
to you.
nice. That's so nice of you.
Yeah.
I was going to say also there's some chatter about maple syrup as an alternative to honey, and we have a researcher in the College of Pharmacy, Dr. Sealand, who's doing some work looking at the health benefits of maple syrup. And so if anyone's interested in that, there happens to be a recorded webinar up on YouTube that you can watch. And Dr. Missimer has another recorded webinar up there that she gave earlier last year. So lots of thank yous coming in. I'd like to thank you. It was really nice spending this evening with you. Everyone, we will be back live on January 19th. I had to do the math quickly in my head. January 19th, we have another webinar with one of our volunteers, David Visso, who leads our native plant restoration projects at a few of our wildlife refuges. So if you're interested in gut biodiversity and ecosystem biodiversity, join us on January 19th. In the meantime, everybody stay healthy, stay well. Amanda, as always, you're the best. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Night, night.